when we interact with the physical world, there's um, this very comforting expectation of solidity.
Mm.
Like if you and I are sitting here across from each other and there is a ceramic coffee mug resting on the table right between us, we don't really have to debate its existence.
Right, yeah. You see a mug, I see a mug.
Exactly, I see it, you see it. It acts as this fixed anchor point in our shared environment.
And, well, because our physical environment relies so heavily on those fixed anchors, we naturally, almost unconsciously, really project that exact same expectation onto our cognitive environment.
Oh, absolutely.
We assume that reality itself, even the abstract reality of ideas or events or conversations, is this universally shared stage that we are all just walking across together.
Right. But the moment you step away from physical objects, that solid ground completely vanishes.
It really does.
I mean, think about a scenario, and I'm sure you listening right now have experienced this countless times. You walk out of a strategy meeting with a colleague.
Oh, a classic example.
Right. You both sat in the exact same room. You looked at the exact same presentation slides on the screen. You heard the exact same words spoken by the exact same executive.
Hmm.
And yet, when you compare notes 5 minutes later by the water cooler,
Hmm.
it is like you attended two entirely different meetings.
Literally two different realities.
Yeah. One of you walks away thinking, wow, the company is pivoting brilliantly, and the other is absolutely convinced that layoffs are imminent.
And this divergence, this difference in reality, it isn't a rare exception. It's not some, glitch in our communication hardware or a momentary lapse in attention.
Right.
It is the absolute fundamental norm of human existence.
Which honestly brings us to the central question of today's deep dive. We're exploring a truly fascinating set of philosophical documents from the Reflective Humanism project.
Yes.
Specifically, we're looking at notes from a framework called Core Fields, version 1.4, alongside this foundational text known as N71 base. And our mission today is not just to talk about the fact that people have different perspectives. I mean, that's basic psychology. You already know that.
Right, that's surface level.
Exactly. The mission today is to look at the deeply mechanical, almost physics-based explanation these texts offer for human cognition. We're going to explore the mechanics of how we process reality and ask this really quiet, haunting question.
Which is,
Why doesn't our understanding ever truly align?
it's a profound question. And, the reflective humanism texts are remarkable because they demand that we strip away our baseline assumptions about what it actually means to know something.
Yeah.
They ask us to look at the machinery of our own minds with this very quiet, clinical transparency. And to begin that process, we really have to look closely at the paradox of certainty.
The paradox of certainty.
Yeah, the certainty that accompanies those everyday divergences you just mentioned.
Well, let's look at that. Let's sit with that paradox for a second.
Yeah.
Because the fascinating part of that strategy meeting example isn't just that you and your colleague disagree.
Right.
It's the internal state of both observers. Like, despite the glaring differences in your interpretations, both of you walk away feeling absolutely unshakably certain that your read on the room was the correct one.
Precisely. You both feel deep in your bones that you have captured the objective reality of the situation perfectly.
Yeah.
And this is the core takeaway of the N71 base text's early observations. It's the undeniable structural coexistence of different interpretations.
Meaning, we aren't all just circling around one single truth.
Exactly. We are not uncovering a hidden shared meaning that exists independently out there in the ether.
Right.
The text suggests that we are each living entirely within our own uniquely generated meaning, and yet our biological programming makes that generated meaning feel like an objective, universal truth.
It feels like the coffee mug on the table.
Yes, exactly. It feels solid.
So mechanically speaking, if we aren't uncovering shared meaning, the communication isn't just, me handing you a flash drive of data that you download into your brain. What exactly is happening when we interact with information?
Well,
Because the Core Fields document has a very specific, totally unconventional way of redefining this.
it does.
It argues that understanding is actually a process of interference.
Yes, interference. The text uses the Japanese term kansho. It's a concept borrowed directly from wave physics, but here they apply it rigorously to human cognition.
Right.
Understanding is not the transfer of a static object. It is an active interference pattern.
Okay, so when I think of interference in physics, my mind usually goes straight to acoustics.
Okay, let's hear it.
So if you play the exact same musical note from the exact same, let's say, a middle C in a massive vaulted stone cathedral,
Oh, beautiful space.
Right, massive space.
Right.
And then you play that exact same note again in a small, heavily carpeted, soundproof vocal booth.
Mm,
The resulting sound you actually hear in those two rooms is entirely different.
completely different.
The raw audio wave coming out of the speaker is identical, but the physical architecture of the room interferes with the wave.
Yeah.
It reflects it, it absorbs it, it bounces it around until the final sound is this unique product of both the wave and the room itself.
Right.
Is that sort of how we should visualize cognitive interference?
That is actually a brilliant way to conceptualize it, because the N71 base text is incredibly precise about what constitutes the architecture of the room inside the human mind.
Okay.
An interference pattern in cognition is created when an external frequency, so the words someone is saying, a text message you just received, maybe the site of an event.
The raw audio wave.
Exactly. When that external frequency enters your system and collides with your deeply internal, highly specific variables.
So the acoustic padding of my brain, so to speak.
The acoustic padding of your life, really. In this case, the padding is the immense depth of your unique assumptions.
Right.
It's your entire unbroken history of past experiences up to that exact second. It's the specific cultural nuances of the vocabulary you possess. It's your current metabolic state, your cortisol levels, the exact emotional context you are sitting in when that information hits you.
That is so deeply layered. So the information from the outside world is just this raw frequency.
Just a frequency.
And when it crashes into the massive, wildly complicated architecture of my own life history, the resulting pattern, that unique reverberation that is generated, that is what I call understanding.
It is. That's exactly it. And, this leads to a really profound shift in how we view consciousness itself.
How so?
Well, the Corfields document argues that consciousness isn't a fixed container. It's not a bucket sitting in your skull waiting to be filled with facts.
Right.
Consciousness is described as a generation field.
A generation field.
Yes, it is the biological act of perception happening in real time. The text describes it as the energy of life touching the world, breathing with it, and transforming raw, chaotic fluctuations of data into coherent meaning. So going back to your analogy, you are the cathedral, and your consciousness is the interference pattern that arises when the world plays a note inside you.
Okay, I want to pause here.
Sure.
Because it sounds beautiful, it really does. But it brings up what feels like a massive philosophical hurdle.
Okay, what is it?
If my understanding is just this highly localized, highly personal interference pattern, and your understanding is a completely different interference pattern based on your unique architecture, what exactly is a misunderstanding then? I mean, if all understanding is just a subjective interference pattern, doesn't that just give us a free pass to be terrible communicators?
How do you mean?
Well, say I give you the wrong directions to the hospital, and you end up 10 miles away in a total panic. That isn't just a differing interference condition, right?
No.
That's just me being factually wrong. So where does objective reality fit into this framework? Or does the text suggest we just, abandon the idea of facts altogether?
That is a crucial distinction to make. And honestly, it's a trap that a lot of people fall into when they start discussing subjective reality.
Yeah, the post-truth trap.
Exactly. But the reflective humanism texts are not denying empirical facts.
Okay, good.
Whether a car is traveling at 60 miles per hour or whether you turn left or right on Main Street, those are verifiable data points.
Right.
But the text makes a very strict delineation between raw data and the meaning generated from that data.
Okay, walk me through that difference. How does that play out in the hospital example?
Let's use your example exactly. The directions to the hospital are data. If you say turn left instead of turn right, the data is flawed.
Right, it's just bad data.
Yes, but the meaning of that event, how it is processed by the other person, the intent assigned to it, the emotional reality it creates in them, that is where the generation field takes over.
Oh, I see.
If you give me wrong directions, my interference pattern might generate the meaning. They are careless and they don't respect my time or safety.
Yeah.
But your interference pattern sitting in the passenger seat based on your stress and your exhaustion might generate the meaning. I made a simple mistake because I'm overwhelmed and they are overreacting.
Wow, yeah. We both agree on the data, you were lost.
Exactly. We agree on the data, but our generated realities of what that data means are entirely unaligned.
Okay, I see. So the text is fiercely focused on the generation of meaning, not the measurement of distance or mass.
Yes. And this leads to what might be the most vital insight in the N71 Buzz-based text.
Which is?
It demands a complete reframing of the word misunderstanding.
Okay.
According to this philosophy, when we are talking about meaning, a misunderstanding is not an error.
It's not an error.
No, it is not a failure of intelligence, and it's not a glitch in communication. A misunderstanding is a structural necessity.
A structural necessity.
Yes, because our starting premises, our internal architectures, our cathedrals, are fundamentally different. It naturally occurs.
It has to occur.
It physically has to occur. Expecting two people to generate the exact same understanding of a complex situation is literally like playing that middle C in the stone cathedral in the padded booth and then being furious that they don't sound identical.
Well, when you put it like that, it completely changes the friction of daily life.
It really does.
I mean, think about the last time you were absolutely furious in an argument. You're sitting there thinking, how can they not see the reality of this situation? It is right in front of them.
Right.
But applying this framework, they literally cannot see it the way you do, because the way it is doesn't exist independently of the person observing it.
Exactly.
The pain we feel during an argument comes from this false expectation that our generation field should align perfectly.
And that false expectation is the root of so much unnecessary suffering.
Yeah.
Once you accept that misunderstanding is the default structural reality of human cognition, you stop treating it as a hostile act.
Right, it's not an attack.
Exactly. Or a failure that you need to be angry about. You start treating it as a natural phenomenon to be observed and managed.
I love that. But it does make me wonder about the macro level.
Scaling it up.
Yeah, scaling it up. Because if my reality is totally isolated from yours, how on earth did we manage to build society?
It's a great question.
This is where I struggle a bit. We write complex tax codes. We build massive international supply chains. We draft constitutions.
We do.
And we treat our institutions and our laws as if they are solid objects. Like they're built on a foundation of universally shared, agreed-upon understanding.
Right.
But if everyone is just locked in their own generation field, acting as their own cathedral, how does a civilization actually function without just collapsing into chaos?
The Corfield's text addresses this exact paradox. And its conclusion is, well, it's pretty startling.
Let's hear it.
Society is not built upon a foundation of shared understanding.
It's not.
No, it cannot be, by definition. Because understanding inherently varies, the text points out that human civilization is actually constructed upon overlapping, mismatched differences.
Okay, so what are these institutions then, if not shared agreements?
The N71 base document describes social institutions, laws, corporate structures. It describes them not as reflections of perfect agreement, but as fragile adjustment structures.
Adjustment structures. What does that look like visually?
Think of it like a tensegrity structure.
Oh, like those wire sculptures.
Exactly. If you've ever seen one of those tensegrity sculptures made of rigid rods and tension wire.
Yeah, they look like they have completely defy gravity.
They do. The solid rods in the sculpture never actually touch each other. They're completely isolated in space.
Right.
What holds the sculpture up, what gives it a definable shape and strength, is the continuous managed tension of the wires pulling in different directions.
That is such a fascinating way to look at it. So the rods are our individual isolated generation fields.
Yes.
We never actually touched perfectly.
Exactly. We never touch perfectly. And society isn't this solid brick building where every brick is locked into the next.
Right.
It is a tensegrity structure held together by the tension of our misalignments.
Wow.
Take a legal contract, for example. It isn't a document of perfect shared understanding.
That's not.
No. It is a boundary wire. It's a managed friction point that basically says, we don't understand this entirely the same way, but we have adjusted the tension enough that we can both operate without the structure collapsing.
So we maintain the structure despite the chronic misalignment.
Exactly.
But that raises an incredibly practical question for our listeners.
Okay.
If our understandings are structurally doomed to never align perfectly,
Right.
and if our society is just this delicate web of managed misunderstandings held together by tension wires, what is the point of dialogue? I mean, truly, why do we sit at negotiation tables? Why do we have deep, vulnerable conversations late at night with our friends if we know the other person is fundamentally incapable of receiving the exact meaning we are transmitting?
Because the purpose of dialogue, according to the source material, has been entirely misunderstood by modern culture.
Alco.
The goal of dialogue is not to eliminate differences. It is not to force a single, synchronized truth onto both parties until you achieve perfect agreement.
Right.
The purpose of dialogue is a continuous process the text calls tuning, or in Japanese, koritsu.
Tuning. Not aligning, but tuning.
Yes. The text introduces two types of cognitive generation that happen when our interference patterns meet in the real world.
Okay, what are they?
Discontinuous generation and continuous generation. And understanding the mechanics of these two paths is the key to exactly how we should be talking to each other.
Let's break those mechanics down. What is discontinuous generation?
Discontinuous generation is born from collision.
Collision.
Yes. Mechanically, it happens when the difference between two people's views, what the text calls the phase difference, is too steep. It's too sudden. Imagine two audio waves that are completely out of phase just slamming into each other. When we enter a conversation demanding that the other person abandon their internal architecture and accept our generated reality immediately, we create a steep gradient.
We basically force our wave onto theirs.
Exactly. We assert rigid facts and demand immediate compliance. The text says this creates a collision. It generates heat, pain, and a fracture in the relationship.
Right.
It is a forceful update to the system. It's a lot like slamming the brakes on a car going 60. The system might stop, but the physical backlash to the passengers is severe.
Wow, I can map that perfectly onto reality. It is every screaming match over Thanksgiving dinner.
It really is.
Right, it's every polarized political debate on social media where neither side is listening but merely projecting their wave as loudly as possible.
It's a raw collision.
A painful, steep gradient of difference.
Yeah.
So how does continuous generation avoid that? How does tuning mechanically work?
Continuous generation is where true dialogue lives. Instead of a collision, dialogue uses specific tools, primarily genuine, open-ended questions, to ease the gradient of difference.
Wait, how does a question alter a cognitive phase difference?
Well, think about the mechanics of a statement versus a question.
Okay.
When you make a hard statement, you are wrong about this, you project a rigid wave, you build a wall.
Right.
But when you ask a genuine question, what experiences led you to view it that way? You do not project a rigid wall. You project an open frequency.
Oh.
You are inviting their wave into a shared cognitive space without demanding they change it.
It's almost like the mechanics of merging onto a highway.
Oh, that's good.
Right. You don't just drive perpendicularly into moving traffic. That's a collision. That's discontinuous.
Exactly.
You use an on-ramp, you match speeds, you check your blind spots, you adjust your velocity to phase align with the other cars until you can safely share the lane.
That is exactly it. You match speeds.
Yeah.
The text describes this continuous generation as the minimization of pain.
The minimization of pain.
Yeah. Through tuning, we don't erase our differences. We don't pretend that the two cars are now one car.
Right.
We allow our understanding to slowly, continuously spiral forward. We accommodate the reality of the other person's generation field without destroying our own.
That requires an incredible amount of restraint.
It really does. It requires what the text calls the ethics of the observational environment.
The ethics of the observational environment.
Yes. It is the discipline of touching the other person's reality without touching too much. It's maintaining a respectful intellectual distance.
A quiet space.
Exactly. A quiet space that allows the other person to continue generating their own meaning without being overwhelmed or crushed by yours.
And as I think about that, as we sit here observing this philosophy, from the localized physics of our personal perception to the tensegrity structures of our society, it leads me to a final lingering thought, one that I really want to leave you, our listener, with today.
Let's hear.
Synthesizing everything we've just discussed. If our understanding is fundamentally biologically unaligned,
Right.
if we are perpetually locked in our own cathedrals, generating different acoustic meanings from the exact same notes,
Yes.
what exactly are we sharing with each other when we communicate?
Well, the Reflective Humanism Project is careful not to provide a neat, highly packaged conclusion to that question.
Of course.
It is a philosophical text, after all. It wants you to sit with the mystery of it. But it does offer a direction to look.
Which is?
The text suggests that perhaps what we share isn't the content of the meaning itself. We are not sharing the raw data. What we are sharing is the relationship.
We share the space.
We share the environment. We share the silent, attentive space that allows the interference to happen at all. When we tune our differences rather than collide, we create a momentary harmony. The text beautifully refers to this state as the afterglow of gratitude.
The afterglow of gratitude. Not gratitude that you finally agreed with me or that I won the debate,
No, not at all.
but a quiet, mutual acknowledgement that we existed in the same space,
Yeah.
that our waves interacted, even for a brief moment, without destroying each other.
Yes. A quiet assent to the fact that interference occurred. That in a vast, indifferent universe, two isolated generation fields reached out, sensed the steep gradient between them, and chose to tune themselves to each other instead of colliding.
That effort.
Yes, that effort, that willingness to adjust the tension wires and maintain the structure, that is the true substance of human connection.
So as you move through your day, notice the interactions around you. The next time you feel the friction of a misunderstanding building up in a meeting or a conversation with a loved one, remember that it isn't a failure.
It's a necessity.
It is just a difference in architecture. You don't have to force an agreement. You don't have to fix the phase difference. You just have to tune. Thank you for joining us in this quiet space of reflection today. Until next time, keep diving deep.